Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of VENDO Velocity. Super excited to have everyone here with us. It is actually our first VENDO Velocity episode of the year. So we haven't seen everyone since 2024, and we're happy to have you back and kick things off with Josh Hong, who's now one of the most tenured people here on the VENDO team, it seems. But Josh and I actually started at VENDO about a month apart, I think. So almost VENDO twins as far as when we had started here. And he plays a big role on our marketing team. And we're happy to walk you through New Year Now You, which used to be New Year New You. And who knows what it is at this point, but it's a new year. So it's a new you or a now you for 2025. And we're happy to take you through some of the strategies and just some of the data that we've seen thus far. But I would be remiss to not start off the podcast with a little bit of a jab at Josh to get things going, because for the third consecutive time, the Chiefs will be Super Bowl champions in a week from now. You heard it here first. 2 weeks from now, apologies. And Josh is a sad Niners fan who we've beat now twice in the last.
Okay.
Josh, what do you have to say about our Super Bowl victories?
I mean, I'm just gonna say ref ball. I mean, that's all I'm gonna say.
That's all they got, people. That's all
I got. That's all I got. And the Niners, unfortunately, they just have back-to-back injuries, which is what it is. But the Chiefs are good. They made 3 years in a row, so I can't say anything. But it is what it is. Fingers crossed. Go Eagles.
There we go. I don't think I ever would hear Josh saying "Go Eagles," so you know what that means.
Yeah.
But sounds good. We will go ahead and dive on into things here. So, Josh, I want to just get your take on how the event has performed thus far in 2025. I think New Year Now You, New Year New You always has such great expectations to start the year, especially for brands across health and household, supplements, etc. Were there any changes compared to last year that are notable to call out to our audience that maybe they can expect for years to come, or that you think Amazon will maybe turn away from because they didn't work as well maybe this year?
Yeah, I think just going step by step in terms of going from the top. What hasn't changed and what has been working over the years is definitely focusing on any consumable products that are reorderable or subscription products. We've seen a big influx as a whole throughout our clients, and I've done some research, and even on Amazon, just kind of reading out some of the quote unquote record-breaking sales is what they call it every year. But Amazon reported a massive increase in sales for New Year's with a year-over-year increase in total orders processed during the holiday season, which includes just New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. They also seen that with the New Year promotion that Amazon actually does during the New Year for Amazon Prime subscriptions, they've seen over 70% of signups increase year over year as well. So just along the board, we always kind of expect New Year's to be a huge increase in terms of signups for subscriptions, signups for Prime, eligibility, and all that good stuff. And then, of course, the top categories, like Delaney mentioned, were always kind of like electronics, home improvement, supplement categories as a whole. Basically, anything that you search that says New Year, New Me, or New Year Now You, or even the great search term that they utilize is New Year's resolution related products, have seen a huge influx of search total overall. And for us here at VENDO, what we've seen work the most is actually capitalizing on subscription growth during this time. Now, what does that mean? Overall, it's pretty simple, I would say, but not a lot of brands really take advantage of it, is utilizing subscribe and save coupons to the maximized capacity, during this time frame. And what that means is doing basically an ongoing SnS coupon on basically all of the reorderable products as a whole, and keeping it online during the whole time frame. And then basically what we usually always do is looking at the churn rate, right? Because people might just subscribe and take advantage of the promotion on a January basis. And then we basically follow along and follow that data in months to come. And then if we ever see a churn rate, which is like, who subscribe and then unsubscribe afterwards just to get the promotion, we take advantage of looking at basically the numbers from February. And then if we feel like, okay, we're losing a lot of customers or a lot of subscriptions as a whole, what we try to do is plan that with an external marketing lever, meaning like any email campaigns, affiliates, and then drive additional subscribe and save growth so we can maintain that growth instead of it going skyrocket and then dipping down. We like to keep it at least keep it up and then plateauing at some point. So that's kind of the main key levers that I would say that has been working over the years. And in addition, we've seen a lot of clients actually gaining product eligibility for a lot of some of the deals for New Year Now You, right? And what does that mean? Product eligibility for deals like lightning deals or best deals, and then some opportunities that may rise for brands like top deals or manual deals, what they've transitioned to call it over the years. I feel like they've gone through 3 iterations of top deals, but it is what it is. But regardless, like taking advantage of opportunities that come up for the brand or the client as a whole, and really taking advantage of basically the free traffic that you monetize for these type of events, right? So taking advantage to the most of your ability would be the 2 top things I would say that has been working for us as a whole. Third thing that we have noticed that actually really helps as well is brand store optimizations and PDP, like in the back end, doing SEO research and all that good stuff for search terms. Every year, actually, it's been a kind of a best practice here at Vendo. We try to optimize our brand stores to New Year Now You to clients that makes sense for, right? Like making a banner saying, hey, take advantage of the new year, get all these products on deal, and we make like a deals page as an example, right? Pretty bare bones, but at the end of the day, we've seen that it does not only convert higher on the brand store page, but also helps with our PPC, right? So we've been kind of always reluctant to grab all of our departments and then kind of focus on one thing and where to drive to, rather than kind of sporadically going all over the place. And I think that's what's really been the difference between our New Year Now You campaigns versus others that I've seen just kind of floating around. So I think those 3 things really play a major part in our strategy as a whole here at Vendo. And what's not been working, funny enough, what I've noticed that doesn't work is just doing a coupon on a regular product or a reorder coupon per se. I'm sure maybe the audience knows that reorder coupons are slightly new. But we've actually tested on some clients with doing a reorder coupon and a regular ongoing coupon instead of just a flat out SNS coupon. And it does convert, but funny enough, the people that reorder actually don't come back to subscribe. So they're just kind of taking advantage of the promotion, and we've been kind of stirring away from that this year. But last year we did want to kind of test out, and it hasn't been so fruitful. So we've stirred away from reorder coupons as a whole this year.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And just for our audience on what reorder coupons are, for those of you who haven't used them in the past, basically Amazon understands what the traditional reorder window is for a given product. And if the customer does not reorder within that traditional window, then that coupon you will have the ability to make eligible on that specific product. So then the customer can choose to reorder at a discount, because if not, they're not reordering within that time period anyways. You probably already lost the customer. So what Josh is saying there makes a lot of sense, where you probably lost the customer to begin with. They're only purchasing because there's a discount. They're not your loyal customer that's choosing to subscribe for your product. But Josh, you said so much there. That was all fantastic. So just breaking that down into each section, because I want to ask some questions there. Step 1, subscribe and save coupons. I think we all know that, especially for brands who are running for the January period, the most important thing in January is customer acquisition. Why is that? Because a lot of these brands have great LTVs or lifetime values, and they know that the value of the customer in month 1 is only going to continue to grow over the 12-month period. So with that, if you can get a subscriber in month 1 and pay, call it a 20% discount to acquire them plus whatever ad spend you'll be running, then they will essentially be in your funnel for the rest of the year. And even beyond that, maybe purchasing 3 to 4 more times without having to acquire them because they're already a customer that you quote unquote own. So Josh, talk a little bit about what that sweet spot is as far as SNS coupons, because we're seeing more and more brands on the 1P side have accrual-based incentives for SNS coupons. They're maybe committing to like a 2.5% accrual-based incentive, and you see some of those going up to like 35%.
Yeah.
What is the sweet spot there?
Yeah, I think it's tricky, right? In terms of, I mean, that question can go a range of ways in terms of what the actual sweet spot, quote unquote, is. And what Delaney is asking for in terms of what the sweet spot is what the discount percentage would be on average that we see across basically, I guess, our portfolio as a whole. Again, it just really depends on the category as a whole. And the biggest thing that we've seen is just trying to stay competitive, right? Even if, like, let's just say for me, I recommend a brand like, hey, let's do a 20% off SNS coupon, and they run with it. But when we do the actual category research where we were at in the search terms, 20% were the highest, let's just say as an example. So we try to match it to to the best of our ability so that we stay competitive, but not stay on the lower end of the funnel of like what the discounts should be. So the brands, or not the brands, the customers as a whole, when they get driven to these search terms and these pages, they're like, okay, this can do, right? This is still like competitive. And then they decide like, okay, which product do I want to try, or which product am I going to go back to, right? So a lot of the times we try to stay as competitive as much as we can to at least not be on the lower end side. I would say that's kind of the average, quote unquote, is that we try to stay aligned on.
That's a great point. And I think one thing from a KPI standpoint that a lot of our brands kind of pivot towards tracking, especially for Q1, is customer acquisition costs rather than focusing primarily on ROAS or even tacos. I know most of the time they're hyper-focused on tacos, let's say, because that will also include our organic sales. But when we're guided by a CAC metric, we could really set the standard for the rest of the year on how much are we willing to acquire or pay to acquire a customer now, so that we can have them in our funnel for the rest of the year there. So that's a great point there, Josh. We've also seen just so many different changes to Amazon Subscribe and Save dashboard overall. So Amazon as a whole is really leaning into this feature, trying to develop new insights for brands to see. Can you speak a little bit as far as how that's been revamped in the last year or so, and maybe what some of the limitations are that you would want from Amazon when it comes to actual that dashboard in reality?
Oh man, don't get me started on the wish list because it'll just go on forever. But overall, I think Amazon is going in the right direction in terms of the revamp that they've done in the SNS dashboard as a whole. So the main key feature I would say that they did adjust, like late last year, I would say like even this November, is showing what that product, let's just say we have one product that's on SNS, how frequent that subscription is going out. So that can, if we have that KPI, we can capture like, hey, let's just say as an inventory example, let's just say we have 500 subscriptions, right? And then we have 1,000 units on hand. We can then kind of base off of, okay, so since this is ordered every 2 months, that means we need to have at least 500 units every 2 months of inventory, right? So that's also good for like logistical needs, obviously. So that's been a great addition. And then another thing that they have been adding is seeing where you are in the 30, 60, 90 trend of the sales based off of actual unit subscriptions rather than, I don't know if you guys remember, but in the old SNS, it's just kind of like an estimate based off of your order history rather than like your unit subscriptions as a whole. So that's been changed. And the biggest thing that I think is a huge plus is the export feature on SNS Dashboard. They did not have that in the past. You had to actually manually copy and paste it. And that's been an enjoyment to say the least. Full sarcasm.
Whoever thought that was a good idea, right?
Yeah, full sarcasm, by the way. But no, again, I think just Amazon as a whole, they are finally listening to the sellers as a whole in terms of what is needed in to really see like what kind of reporting aspect is needed. So, and I think the subscribe and save dashboard is off to the right direction. My biggest wish list I wish they could had is expected subscription rate,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think they'll ever give us that. The only things to our listeners, I'm sure you guys would know if you guys are sellers. The only things that we get are like little banners saying like, "Oh, if you toggle from 0% to 10%, you see a 15% lift in subscriptions." And we're like, "Okay, well, like, how do we track that, right?" So that's kind of the biggest thing that I would say. If Amazon wants the sellers to actually really lean into those kind of banner call outs, is to actually show us like, "Hey, you started on X date at 0%. And we've seen that you've done the 10% seller funded discount for 30 days. And this is what the growth looks like." If we even had that kind of graph, like the amount of selling points that we can have as an agency, but also for the seller, like to kind of ease their minds, like, okay, this is actually going to work. And for the long run, for me, this is going to work, right? Because then, like going back to what Delaney called out, they're going back to a CAC model, let's just say, that they can at least anticipate how many subscriptions and what the cost would be. And then if needed, like extra levers for new customers, then what they can do is kind of shift towards like BTP, like brand tailored promotions as an example, right? And lean on those type of things. So I think overall, subscribe and save dashboard, good adjustments and good revamp so far. Of course, I'm always going to have or for me, at least in my opinion, I'm always going to have like a bad taste in my mouth because there's always something that they can do better. But I'm just going to take it with a grain of salt and be happy with some of the adjustments that they are making and working towards, and then keep it at that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And on top of what you were saying too, Josh, I think what they're trying to get better at and what we've seen some growth in is in that churn and retention side of the business, right? So specifically looking at churn, that was one of the main questions. I know Josh alluded to it earlier, is like, how can we effectively monitor churn for SNS subscribers? And what they're doing now is they actually have different pie charts within the SNS dashboard that will show you sales by delivery. So it will show you, okay, these are the number of subscriptions that have been canceled after just one delivery. These are the active number of subscriptions that have one delivery. And these are subscriptions that have 2+ deliveries. And us as Vendo can really weigh that across brands, understand within categories, how is that percentage changing? Which of our brands are maybe over indexing versus under indexing, and where there might be more of a retention or a churn problem overall. And then it will also show you subscriber retention over like a 30-day period and a 90-day period. So you could say, okay, well, my 30-day subscriber retention might be high, but over the next 90 days, that drops to 30 to 40%. Like, that's pretty poor. They're probably just looking for a discount in the earlier stages to get that first purchase at a discount. They're not a long-term subscriber of ours. So what are we doing fundamentally that we might need to change on how we're communicating with the customers, how we're marketing the product overall, etc. But Josh, you talked about another important lever, which we'll backtrack a little to, brand tailored promotions. And I think that that's another just low-hanging fruit initiative that not enough brands are taking advantage of, especially coming out of Q4, when you have so many new customers who have maybe interacted with your brand for the very first time. And a lot of these brands will say, okay, well, we're not a Q4 heavy brand, so that's not as big for us. However, what are you seeing in terms of the actual audience sizes? Because it does give you that for the specific buckets. Looking into Q1, are those larger? Do they have a point and those buckets are actually smaller?
No, I would not say that the bucket is getting smaller by any means. Just for the listeners that may not know, brand tailored promotions has segmented audiences that we can kind of promote our products to at a discount rate. So what Blaney is alluding to is one of the biggest audiences that I would say that we, again, utilize to the best of our ability, are brand card abandoners, right? Especially during the Q4 times, because brand card abandoners or brand tailored promotions, the audiences go back to 90 days. So if we go back 90 days, even from today, I mean, that includes what? Prime Big Deals days. I mean, cutting it off a little bit. Prime Big Deals days, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then Christmas. So in Q4, as everyone knows, those are probably the biggest events, but also, you know, to Delaney's point, we might have clients or brands as a whole. They're like, oh, we're not like a really giftable product, or we don't see too much, you know, like units being sold during that time for us, et cetera, et cetera. But what they don't understand is that we're capturing and we're targeting specific brand cart abandoners. So like, let's just say they're not even trying to buy the product during that time. Let's just say the brand didn't even have a discount. But at the end of the day, we're still going to show up on search terms that are relevant to search queries. And a lot of these brands don't understand, like, even if a customer would literally just click on your product and then they just click on add to cart and save for later or whatever it is, that toggles them into the brand cart abandoners customer segmentation, right? So regardless of what brands think and assume, that even if they aren't huge Q4 players, but the influx of traffic that comes in during that time, and that visibility and sessions that grow continuously during any of our brands, or all of our brands for that fact of the matter, is that we need to capitalize on it, especially during Q1, to really just kind of vamp our Q1 strategies as a whole. So in my opinion, I'm pretty sure all of our clients at Vendo do this on an evergreen basis, because we kind of make it mandatory at this point, I would say, or it's just a no-brainer to have it online. Is just really, really taking advantage of brand tailored promotions, because I think that's the biggest unlock that they've done in 2024, is actually allowing sellers and brands to like recapture your audience on Amazon and segmenting it out so that you can actually promote it to that audience. Like, we've never, ever had that capacity on Amazon. And I don't see why brands are like even hesitant about it. Like, even as a testing method, like, you can always, you know, test it out on certain products. Like, you don't even have to do it on all products, right? You can kind of pick and choose. So just kind of overall, I think it's wasted if you don't really take advantage of it as a whole. Even if you feel like Delaney mentioned, I don't do so hot in Q4, blah, blah, blah. But I think overall, just with the added sessions and the traffic that comes in during that time, and it gives us more eyes on our products, even if we're not trying to actually sell it aggressively, it's still going to show up on people's search terms, right? If their algorithm, of course, allows it. So I think just taking advantage of that is huge. And then, of course, now kind of going back to the CAC conversation that we had, there's also an audience that you can do high potential new customers. And those are all just net new customers that you're grabbing at a minimum discount of 10% off of your product, right? Of course, with like the referral fee, the COGS, blah, 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 those do add up. But again, we've never had this capability on Amazon ever before. And it just doesn't make sense not to capitalize on it or take advantage of it when the situation arises.
And the great part too, Josh, is now finally, rather than just the badge that says like 10% promo available, you can also run ads to those specific audience segments. So we've tested over the last few months running ads to cart abandoners, and it has actually fared really well. Of course, they're already looking for your product. As Josh said, they're interested in your product. They're already in the funnel. They probably clicked around. They already added to cart, as we know. All you have to do is get them to purchase. So when you do get to do that, and you're a new you brand who has a stronger lifetime value, it makes all the sense to maybe put a little bit of ad spend behind that as well. Perfect. So we talked about brand tailored promotions. We talked about subscribe and save coupons. Another point that you made was just on deals specifically. And you mentioned a few: lightning deals, manual deals, best deals, etc. When it comes to this period specifically in Q1, what are you traditionally recommending to brands as far as their approach from a deal type perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of our recommendations for deal types, unfortunately, a lot of the times for a lot of brands, they don't have that, not decision, I would say, but that kind of realm into like choosing, okay, like, do I want to do a best deal, or do I want to do a lightning deal, or do I want to do a manual deal? A lot of the times it's either you're stuck with either or, unless you're like an actual tier one brand, is what we call it here at Vendo, right? Like, you sell in a month at least $1 million or a plus, and it's just like kind of like a given baseline that you have. then more opportunities are going to show up on the deals page. But a lot of the times, unfortunately, a lot of clients as a whole is like they're just stuck with either a lightning deal or just the best deal. And then a lot of the times manual deals are not even possible for, I would say, 80% of the population and sellers for Amazon, right? Unless you have a good, like within a good program like SaaS or new brand launch program that's also recently just launched on Amazon, like any of those kind of special, unique programs, manual deals are kind of out of the question. But let's just say, to answer Delaney's question, a brand has the opportunity to choose 1, 2, or 3, 1 being lightning deal, 2 being a best deal, or 3 being a manual deal. So now what we try to get to the bottom of is what are the brand's expectations and what is our recommendations in aligning with the goal that they have. I'm going to make up a scenario. Let's just say a brand that is hyper-focused on 2025 for margin. How are we going to recommend what deal that we want to really recommend to them as a whole? First and foremost, we look at basically the margin analysis, right? Looking at that. And then what it looks like from a lightning deal. Lightning deal is a 12-hour deal, 12 to 24-hour deal. Best deal is like a 1 week long deal. It could actually go longer than a week, depending if it's a special event or not. For New Year Now You, as an example, we had the opportunity for a brand to run it actually for 2 weeks. But doing a deal for 2 weeks, I'm sure you guys may, like a lot of brands and sellers may know, like it hits the margin really hard. And starting off the year like that, with a margin goal in mind is not promising, I would say, because Q2, you have a huge event. Q3, you have a huge event. Q4, you have a huge event. Every quarter, it seems like there's always a huge event. But in terms of, let's just say, for margin purposes, we're trying to save on margin and focus on the top line for sales as well. I would recommend always, if opportunity arises, manual deals. And the reason why that is for special events like New Year Now You, and anything basically that Amazon provides that have a deal eligibility requirement for, is always going to get special placement. Not always, I would say, but a lot of the times you do get special placement. So taking advantage, again, I always say this to the best, like every time, is taking advantage of any event that Amazon throws at you, because you don't know when the next opportunity is going to be. I'm sure Delaney knows, Delaney and I know, like the opportunities always just come randomly, like come and go, come and go, come and go. And if we lose the opportunity, it just hits me at least with the hardest regret, because I always been like, dang, I should have just reserved it and then just throw it at the brand and see what they say. Because at the end of the day, the worst thing that they can say is no. But in terms of, I guess, kind of like short lighting in terms of what the opportunity is there, lightning deal has always been my favorite, just because it draws so much attention to the shopper as a whole and to the product, because right above the buy box, it shows basically how much time is left on the deal and also how many units are left within the deal. What I like to do, at least, and this is kind of some secret sauce, I like to go in the back end and make my minimum committed units for lightning deals at the minimum, and then start raising it while it gets closer to like the 90% to the 100 percentile. It kind of plays mind tricks with the consumer, right? Basically stating like the urgency, like, oh, I need to buy this product before it sells out, or whatever it is. So I do play that a lot within lightning deals. But overall, that I've seen, kind of going from like 1, 2, 3, 1 being the best, manual deals have been the best, just historically, I would say, here at Vendo, and that I've seen, at least from articles that I've read on Amazon. 2, lightning deals. Yes, it is only a 12-hour flash deal, but the amount of control and adjustments that we can do, I feel like, can open up a lot of ways for the seller to really open up the kind of the can of worms to a lot of the consumers as a whole. And then third but not least, the best deals. And the reason why I say best deals last is, I would say the only thing that really comes good out of a best deal are the like the badges that come with it for the events. But outside of that, it's just like not really too much urgency going on around it, like built around it. It's just kind of like, okay, you have a 20%, let's just say you have a 20% off discount for the rest of like the 2 weeks. And you get special placement, of course, if it's like a event like New Year Now You, but at the same time, it's like there's no real urgency to it. And like the consumer doesn't know like, okay, when does this end or when did it start? So like, I really like how Lightning Deals has that kind of way of like showing to the seller or the consumer, like, hey, this got on sale and there's 11 hours left and there's only 50 products that you can buy. Like, I like that just from a marketing passion, I would say, or from like me, it just makes my heart kind of like throb a little bit when I see something like that. But I think overall, like all those three things, if a brand ultimately has the opportunity to do so, is test it out. Like honestly, it doesn't hurt. And if you feel like it didn't work, and if you feel like, okay, my inventory positioning is not great, you can cancel it the last minute. So all you got to do is just reserve it, and then obviously make sure everything is good. And then if you want to go through with it, great. You can just run it, let it run. But if you feel like, okay, like this is not in my wheelhouse this time of the year, whatever it is, just cancel it. There are no drawbacks to it. They're like, Amazon doesn't punish you, doesn't say like, oh, you can't run deals anymore for the rest of the year. Like nothing like that. So I think everyone that is on Amazon, like Delaney and myself have been doing this, like she mentioned, we've been just at Vendo for almost 3 years, but what we've noticed.
4, Josh. I think it's almost 4 now.
Jesus. I don't want to think. All right. Yeah. Time flies. But anyways, I think the biggest thing that like, I feel like Delaney can really piggyback from me on this is like testing. Like there's just on Amazon, like if you don't test, like how are you going to succeed? Right. You don't know what's going to work. Even when it comes to like the ad side, like Delaney can probably talk about this. It's like on PPC, like you're not going to just target sponsored search terms, right? You're gonna do non-branded search terms to see like what works and what doesn't. It's kind of the same thing with deals. You gotta really see like what works for your brand and what doesn't work for your brand.
And I think you made a great point earlier too, that yes, we've scratched the surface of best deals, manual deals, lightning deals, but the bigger part of that entire strategy is how you're driving traffic to those deals on Amazon. So Josh talked earlier about social, about email, right? Like these are all levers that brands should be pulling to only maximize the success of these deals. And then I even saw a study the other day that a brand had around TikTok and TikTok awareness specifically. Of course, we could have a whole other discussion around the ban and what that means. And I'm looking forward to doing that soon. However, that brand was saying, yes, my TikTok sales aren't necessarily substantial on TikTok Shop. However, when I did a consumer survey, TikTok drove 65% of overall awareness for my brand, which is like insane, right? Like they're not purchasing on TikTok. Maybe they have some issues with TikTok Shop, which we know that a lot of brands are now trusting TikTok Shop, but it's still a great awareness channel. So that's something to keep in mind is you can't just set it and forget it, to Josh's point. You have to consistently be testing, but with that testing comes different external levers that you need to pull based on where your brand is best positioned. So Josh, I feel like we could go on and we might need to have a follow-up to this, because we didn't even touch on your last point, which was brand stores and the fact that we're seeing, 15 to 20% of traffic come from brand stores. For some brands, for Q4, we even saw 50% of traffic come from a brand store, which is insane.
That's insane. So,
yeah. Optimize your brand store. Do not
seriously.
Brand store. But Josh, really appreciate having you here. You left such great insights, and I'm glad that we kicked it off with you for our very first episode of Vendo Velocity. And I'll just end on Go Chiefs, unless you wanted to end on something else, Josh, which I'm sure you do.
No. Thank you, Delaney, always for having me. It's always a pleasure. And like you mentioned earlier, I can't believe it's already been 4 years. But it's insane. But thank you, everyone, for watching. Delaney's an amazing host, and please keep watching every week or every other week. She's been amazing. And to the best team in the biz.
Appreciate you, Josh. Talk to you all soon. Bye, everyone.